This is Christianity 101, the podcast connecting busy people with Jesus. I'm your host, Rick Grundy. This is episode 3. Welcome back. We're continuing our new series on the letter, the sermon of Hebrews, and today we're looking at Hebrews chapter 2, verses 1 through 4, and we're continuing to talk about the theme, what is so great about Jesus? A long while ago, I was going to say in a galaxy far away, but let's not go there. A long time ago, when I was, say, an older teenager, I went with a car filled with my friends down to somewhere in the States. And honestly, to this day, I can't remember where I was, but I know that it was kind of a dangerous part of the States. I have no idea where I was. As we're going down, I stopped looking at the map, and I just started looking around, and I just began to drift off course. And I don't know where I was. We weren't lost necessarily, because I could have just grabbed the map, and yeah, in those days it was a map, piece of paper. But I just kept on driving, just taking in all the sights, and I had no idea where I was, but I drifted off course. So we were getting a little low on gas. I pulled into a gas station. While I got out of my car and I was about to put the gas in, suddenly gunshots are flying everywhere, and I'm standing beside a gasoline pump, pumping gas, and bullets are flying. Gunshots are going. And I'm like, where did we get to? I discovered quite quickly that I had drifted so far off of course that we found ourselves in one of the more dangerous neighborhoods of wherever we happened to be at the time. And I wish I knew, because my memory just is not working so well. But I remember that experience, and I remember the sounds, and I remember the bullets, and I remember this is not fun. Just because I didn't pay attention to the map, I was just wandering around, I drifted off of course. There is a danger to getting off course while we're passing through life as a believer. These first couple of podcasts in Hebrews here, the theme really is what's so great about Jesus. Because the first few passages of Hebrews really do explore how much superior Jesus is to everything else, and it really answers the question, what is so great about him? In this passage today, the focus is what we need to do about that knowledge. So if Jesus really is so great, and he is, there's got to be something that you and I need to do about that knowledge. Because if we don't do something with the knowledge, if we put that knowledge on the back burner and just drift through life, then you and I may not hear bullets fly around our heads, but we certainly will find ourselves in danger. Let's just remember the people, the audience, the original audience that this letter, this sermon of Hebrews was intended for. The audience tended to be apathetic. They had lost their first love, Jesus. They still liked him. He was still a great guy. He was still Jesus. They were still following him, sort of. But there were lots of other options taking them off track. And so what the author is doing is he's revealing, look at how much more superior Jesus is. And then, by the way, because he's so much superior, we need to do something about this. So as you read the text today, go ahead and pause in just a moment. Read Hebrews chapter 2, verses 1 to 4. And if you click on the link in the podcast, if you click on Hebrews 2, 1 to 4 in the podcast, it will open up Bible Gateway, and you can read it right there. As you read it, Hebrews 2, 1 to 4, I want you to notice the warning about treating Jesus way too casually and completely missing the opportunity because of drifting. Go ahead and read the text. Here is the unique purpose for this episode today. I want to give us 3 reasons why we need to give the gospel priority. 3 reasons why we need to give the gospel priority. And I don't mean why we need to share the gospel. I mean why we need to receive the gospel and allow the gospel to shape who we are and what we do. Because knowledge bears responsibility. Now that the pastor, the guy who's written Hebrews, or the girl could be, now this pastor has told us why Jesus is greater, he tells us what we need to do about it. Actually, doesn't tell us what we need to do about it only. He warns us that we need to do something because there is a danger in ignoring it. So I'm going to talk to us about antonyms. I don't know what drifting looks like to you, but we're going to talk about what the opposite of drifting is, and we're going to figure out what antonym do you need to chase. We're going to talk about negative outcomes. Yeah, drifting does end up in a negative outcome, and we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to close with the 3 reasons why we need to give the gospel priority. I'm going to start with a question. Question number 1, well, really the only question. What antonym best applies to you? Chapter 2, verse 1 says, "We must pay the most careful attention, therefore, to what we have heard, so that we do not drift away." We must pay most careful attention, therefore what? Therefore, since Jesus is so superior, we must pay most careful attention. Here are some antonyms. Antonyms mean opposites. Here are some antonyms for the word drift. Go direct, run, stay, side, direct, guide, set, and focus. Just a few antonyms. I can give you 3 illustrations here about why I'm wanting you to choose your own antonym here. I was in my basement. I had just finished renovating my basement. And I have these ripsticks, which is kind of like a 2-wheel skateboard. They're on casters, and it's really cool. And I was teaching my 9-year-old daughter how to ripstick. She was holding onto the wall, and she was trying to figure it out. But what happened is she stopped watching where she was going, and she was just focusing on the wall and the board. And she wasn't paying attention to where she was going, and she hit the wall, and she put a little hole in the wall. But I mean, I just finished the basement, so any hole at all is a big hole. She put a little hole in the wall, and she was so apologetic, so sorry. She needed to direct herself. The antonym she needed is direct. Let me give you another illustration. When Luke, my oldest son, was younger, I had this conversation with him about how to better turn on his bicycle. And I said, Luke, you will turn the way that you're looking. So if you look to the left, you'll turn to the left. If you look to the right, you'll turn to the right. Just try that, and you'll turn better. And of course, the little man that he wanted to say, no, I can do everything, even the stuff that you say I can't do. And so he looked left, and he turned his bicycle right, and he did it directly beside my van. He crashed into the side of the van, and the bike left this huge gouge mark down the side of my van door as the bike slid down the side door with Luke's full weight on top of that. Oh, yep. Daddy held on to his patience, though, and I didn't flip out on him. What he needed was a mindset. His mindset was completely off, and he needed better focus. Here's my last illustration here. I'm the youth pastor at our church, and I'm loving it. One of the things that we do in youth nights, as I transition the kids from the games time and the social time that we do into the Bible study time, is I hide bags of chips throughout the property, outside and inside. And then I tell them to go and run and race for these chips, and whoever first finds the chips, they get to eat those chips all through the sermon time. And of course, the kids are good, and they share the chips, but still, it's theirs to share, and it's theirs to keep. And so what happens is some of the kids, they'll just start walking aimlessly around, barely trying, and they won't get anything. And sometimes some of the older kids just don't want to share with them. What they need to do is they need to run. They're treating the game far too casually, and they'll never get a bag of chips. I need us to understand that drifting takes many forms. I need us to understand that drifting, because it takes so many forms, because you and I drift differently, then the solution to drifting is going to be different for you and I. Now, It's very possible. Let's just talk about the readers, the original audience, as his pastor is preaching to his congregation. It's very possible that there were some Jewish congregants who chose to focus on something else instead of Jesus. As a matter of fact, some of them were probably wanting to return to Judaism to ride out the wave of persecution that was coming. So the pastor's warning, there is an extremely negative outcome for drifting, more than you're going to put a hole in Daddy's wall, more than you're going to put a scrape down the door of Daddy's van, more than you're not going to get a bag of chips because you're not running. It's more than that. There is a negative outcome for drifting in our Christian walk, in our relationship with Jesus. Friendships have requirements. The text says, pay the most careful attention. Christianity is a friendship with God. It's not a religion with God. You can keep your religion. God wants a friendship with you. Faith and faithfulness directed toward a living God-man named Jesus. We're talking about a real relationship. Friendships, in general, they require our attention because it's possible to drift out of a friendship. And the pastor is letting us know that it's very, very similar with our friendship with God. Text says, pay most careful attention, means to prioritize this relationship of faith and faithfulness that we call friendship. Jesus is far superior than everything else that we have or that we want. He requires superior attention. Now, the pastor is really concerned with recent events in his church, I think, okay? So we don't really know too much about the recipients of this, too much about the congregation. It's just what we get from in the letter here. And so this is what the letter kind of reveals. So the Romans are turning up the heat of persecution here. People, maybe they're losing their homes, maybe they're taking some abuse. It's just a matter of time before his own congregants may start losing their homes, may start coming to church with black eyes and broken arms, something like that. The persecution's on the rise. It's a serious deal. But I want you to understand that that's not what's concerning the pastor so much, because the pastor is probably going to be one of those homeless people and bruised eyes and broken arms people. He's with the congregation, and so if they get beat up, he gets beat up. That's not his greatest concern. The pastor is concerned, although it is a concern, but the pastor's greatest concern here is that his congregation's focus has been taken off of Jesus and put onto something else. The love of their homes, their jobs, their stuff, and the appeal of returning to Judaism to ride out the persecution that's coming towards the Christians. It's a concern because there is a negative outcome if these Christians continue to drift. Now, I don't have to be concerned about us losing our homes or getting abused, at least not right now in Canada, but there's so much money and options around us that we can be easily distracted. Can I just say free Wi-Fi? Who is not distracted by free Wi-Fi? Consumerism is a religion in Ontario, in my opinion. Yeah, and I'm part of that religion too, for some part, and you are too. It's a religion. One of my friends, Vic, he just came back from Manitoba. And I noticed what he said. He comes from a small town in Manitoba. I think it's called Steinbach. I can't remember. I think that's what it is. And he's coming back from Manitoba, and he comes into Ontario, and he says, Rick, I got to be honest. Once I hit Ontario, once I start driving through Ontario, I can't believe how much money is in this province in Ontario. We're affluent. We don't even know it. Regardless of the cause, drifting ends negatively. And if our affluence is causing us to take our eyes off Jesus, we can be sure that drifting for us as well is going to end negatively. It is so vitally important that you and I keep our focus on Jesus. Do whatever it is that you have to do to make sure that Jesus is receiving your antonym to drifting. I can't tell you what your antonym to drifting is, because we all drift in different ways. You got to figure it out, and I've got to figure it out, and we got to give God the opposite of that, and we need to prioritize, focus. Friendships have requirements, which is what I already said, because friends can drift apart. I just finished that sentence there. The text says, so that we do not drift. My friend Vic, who just came back from Manitoba, he and I were roommates when we were in our, oh my goodness, mid-20s, I guess. And we were roommates for a few years. It was awesome. We had this 2-bedroom apartment, and we were kind of the same, a similar kind of person. We were both singing in Toronto Mass Choir and touring around, which was an awesome time, by the way. Toronto Mass Choir rocks. And it was great that he and I were kind of singing the choir together, communing together. There were times when he and I had like no money at all. I was working 4 part-time jobs at one time. He was working a couple of part-time jobs as well. And sometimes what happens is he had more work and I had no work, so he'd buy groceries. Sometimes I had more work and he didn't, so I'd buy groceries. And this is just how we had to survive. We had to rely on each other, or we would starve. And so it was just awesome. Well, here's what happened though. I got married, and I grew differently. I'm not saying that he stopped growing, because that's not true. I grew differently, and he grew differently. I got married, and I have 4 kids. Okay, he has no kids. I grew differently than he did. And so here's what I've noticed. That I've got this dad thing going on, and he's still got this free spirit vibe going on, that he can do anything at the drop of the hat. And he's doing some really cool things. I mean, he's into writing screenplays now. He's trying to get into the television scene, and it's like totally awesome. He's grown in a different way. He and I are going to find a hard time connecting like we used to when we were both young and single. Now, it's not a big deal. I mean, we're friends. We're going to navigate that. But the reality is that right now our lives are out of alignment. He and I used to be singing the same tune, and now we're out of alignment, and now we're just going to have to work at finding common ground again and continuing to move forward in the friendship. Not a big deal. We're just a bunch of guys. We can hack this. No problem. But getting out of alignment with Jesus, now that is a big deal. And that can have an extremely negative outcome. The text says, do not drift. This is a warning. It's not a law. The pastor isn't trying to make it hard to be a believer. He's saying to us, remember, it's a relationship, and the rules of relationship apply here. So the pastor is giving us a warning. And really, there's 5 warnings all through Hebrews, and this is the first of 5 warnings. And the pastor is giving this warning, just like the others, based on the knowledge that he's just delivered. He said, listen, I've just given you some really great knowledge here about how superior Jesus is. What are you going to do about this? So because we know that Jesus is superior, in the first case, his message and his person, that he's the Son, he is superior to the angels. That's the first case that this pastor's telling us. Something needs to be done because knowledge bears responsibilities. And just remember, warnings are given because negative outcomes are real. They're not given, if you can lose your salvation, hello, there's a warning here. If you can't lose your salvation, then what's the deal with the warning? If you can't lose your salvation, if you can't walk out of your relationship with God, if drifting did not have a negative outcome, then what's the deal with the warning? Well, there's a warning here because the negative outcome is severe when we drift out of friendship with God. I took my family up the CN Tower, and when we were in the CN Tower, there's this glass floor on the CN Tower, and the kids are all watching me, and Daddy is staying away from the glass floor, not going on it. Daddy's kind of afraid of heights, and I like life, and I don't want to drop to and become a pancake, and so I looked at that glass floor and like, I'm not going on there. But my little girl Tina, though, she gets on the thing, she's doing jumping jacks, she's running, she's doing cartwheels, she's laying down face first, looking down at the ground. I'm like, you're crazy. And every part of that daddy inside of me wanted to yell at my kids to get off that floor and come over here to safety. I was losing my mind. So I turned around and I walked away. Here's the deal now, okay? Here's the deal. There are no warning signs posted anywhere around that floor that you're not allowed to do jumping jacks, that you're not allowed to jump. No warning signs at all about crazy behavior. None. You know why? They don't have to warn it because there's no danger. Now, in my mind, I think there's a danger. But in their mind, architect's mind, which are probably smarter than me, and I just choose not to believe it because it's scary, there's no danger. They're not going to fall through the glass floor, so no warning is posted. However, on the elevator ride up, there's a warning given. The warning is, do not jump in the elevator. Do you know why there's a warning given when you're taking a ride up the elevator of the CN Tower? Because if 7-8 people in that elevator start doing a lot of jumping up and down, there will be a negative outcome, and it will be probably severe. And I don't want to be in that elevator. Well, here we got a warning in the text here that's directed towards Christians, and it's a serious warning. The reason why it's a warning is because there is absolutely a negative outcome that you and I need to be aware of. God loves you so very much that he warns you against drifting because he doesn't want to lose his friendship with you. Friends, what antonym best applies to you? Would it be go direct? Instead of drifting, would it be go direct? Are you relying on others to tell you about Jesus and pray for you? Do you need to go directly to the source and work on your personal friendship with Jesus? Don't hang your hat at the door and say, my pastor is going to read the Bible for me. My pastor is going to pray over me. Or my mommy and daddy are going to do that. Or whoever. Or I grew up in the church and so I'm covered. Don't do that. Go directly to Jesus. Connect with him personally. What about the word run? Is that the antonym that's best for you? Do you think you have so much time that you can work on your friendship with Jesus later? Do you need to reprioritize your life? You may not have enough time. And even if you do have a lot of time, what are you doing to invest in your eternity right now? Yeah, we do get rewarded for whatever we do on the earth in order to grow God's kingdom and grow a relationship with him. You need to run. What about the word stay? This is another antonym for the word drift. Are you dabbling or considering other spiritual options that are not in alignment with Jesus? Do you need to stay in the friendship and stop testing the field? How about the word set? Last word here. Last antonym I'm going to share with you. Word set. Is your mindset only on what you can do with your money, your free time, your friends, your games, your cars, your motorcycles? I put that in there because I like my motorcycle a lot. There's nothing wrong with those things at all, unless they become the focus of your mindset ahead of Jesus. Do you need to set your mind on Jesus and focus on following him first? Pastor turns up the heat with this next verse, and he starts talking about the negative outcome. In chapter 2, verse 2 to 3, he says, "For since the message spoken through angels was binding, and every violation and disobedience received its just punishment, how shall we escape if we ignore so great a salvation?" There was a negative outcome when drifting from lesser messages and lesser messengers. Okay, the text, it says message, angels, binding, punishment. In the past, when God spoke through prophets and angels, there was a penalty for not acting. You know, when Jonah was sent to Nineveh, if Nineveh didn't listen to Jonah, Nineveh would have been wiped out. The word punishment is the negative outcome of drifting in this case. So the pastor's letting us know that the message of angels was binding on the listeners. It's not coming directly from God. It's coming through another source. You could almost even say it's hearsay, but there's still punishment there. God's word is still binding even when the messenger is less and the message is less. Jesus and his message, they're both superior. The message is really simple here that the pastor's trying to give us. We are bound even more tightly now, and there is far less wiggle room for drifting. Since the message and the messenger are greater, the warning against drifting is greater. The text says, how shall we escape if we ignore so great a salvation? How shall we escape is what it says. First, you've escaped condemnation because of your faith in Jesus. You have. That's the truth. God doesn't want to judge you and leave you condemned forever apart from him. He doesn't want to do that. He's forgiven you if you've placed your faith in Jesus and you're walking with him. And it stays that way with your continued faithfulness. This is friendship with God. Faith and faithfulness, continued faithfulness. Faith and faithfulness is basically the same thing. That's your friendship with God. God's not looking for perfection. He's looking for a friendship. He's looking for something from the heart. No one has to be worried about God taking away anyone's salvation. He doesn't want to do that. So the warning here is about drifting out of the friendship because our hearts are giving superiority to something other than Jesus, and we're casually slipping away. You don't have to worry about God. He's not going to get tired of you. He's not going to drift away. But you do need to be mindful about your own heart. Drifting is a matter of the heart. Is Jesus the greatest thing that you have? Would you say that Jesus is getting your attention? Would you say that your lifestyle is in alignment with your friendship with him? Are your purchases and entertainment choices taking a back seat to Jesus? How about this question? If your life was a website, would Jesus bookmark you and add you to his favorites? Or would he block you due to your content? Whoa. I want to end with this. The whole reason for this podcast. The 3 reasons why you need to give the gospel priority. Here are, and I'm going to be brief here, just to close it up. Here are the 3 reasons why you need to give the gospel priority. First of all, the messenger is the greatest messenger. We're talking about Jesus, God himself. Second of all, the message is the greatest message. We're talking about eternal life, complete forgiveness, friendship with God. Thirdly, the penalty for treating Jesus and his message too casually is inescapable, and it is totally severe. I want to leave you with one takeaway sentence. Okay, lots of words in this podcast, and I want to give you just one thing to chew on, one thing for you to take away and carry with you, and keep it really simple. Here it is. Okay, now in response to drifting, here it is. Is Jesus first in my heart? I want you to ask that of you. Not of me, of course. Ask that of you. You would ask of yourself. Is Jesus first in my heart? Just 6 words. It's what I want you to carry with you until our next time together. That's it for this episode. God bless you. Can't hardly wait till next Wednesday when we release another episode. See you soon.